Hey, how's it going? It's your boy, Moriarty, Challenger Coach, here with a video where we are going to rank the best late game champions in Season 10. A lot of people are going to talk about or meme about outscaling in solo queue, so I thought I'd actually do the research and find out which champions truly have the right to say, "Don't worry team, we outscale." As a disclaimer, I would like to mention these rankings are done based off of a combination of data from Liga Graphs, LLStylez, as well as our own internal data. These numbers are pulled for low elo, mid elo, and high elo, and then averaged out for champions win rate in the 30 to 35 plus minute game length range, and then the list is put together by moi after reviewing the numbers. I should also note that this is meant to be for solo queue and does not reflect the late game power of these champions in competitive play, where champion mastery gets pushed to its limits and teams actually play around those champions in the late game better and would potentially actually protect those late game monster champions. Who knows? So if you disagree or agree with any of these rankings, let me know in the comment section, but either way, let's actually get started. Starting at number 16, we've got Victor, who puts himself and his team through a horrific early game potential experience, and then just so that he can reach his super strong late game. It's actually only above average in the high-low bracket and does a little bit better in the late game and mid to low elo, which makes the investment kinda less worth it. Despite this issue, he's still very deadly in the late game, as many AD carry mains will forever wake up in a cold sweat at night from getting one rotation by a Victor, so do not underestimate his teamfight damage and zoning potential in the late game. Ryze will be ranked 15th, which might shock some people, but remember, this is solo queue, where his ability to split push is significantly worse. He does also have his ultimate for late game big macro plays, and to be fair to the blue man, even though I hate him, it does make a big impact most of the time. Just not always in favor of his own team. With how hard it is to coordinate that ultimate, it just sometimes just completely throws an entire game, which is no joke impacting his late game win rate. Now, he does still have some really nice late game DPS, but he's only actually making this list due to his impact in high elo, as in mid and low, he barely averages above 50% in the late game win rate department. At number 14, we have the AD carry you forgot was in the game, and that's Kogmaw. He's one of the few champions who doesn't have any dips in his win rate curve and continues to go up as game time increases in all brackets of play. He does have a long history of being one of the best late game carries, with entire comps in the past like Juggernaut, where people actually went Nunu jungle, Lulu mid lane, other tanks or enchanters just to peel for him because he did enough damage for an entire team. Nowadays, with some nerfs, he doesn't have that same degree of late game power, although it's still really strong. The only issue with the champion, it doesn't really relate to this list, is that he's so bad in the early game and he doesn't come online quick enough to warrant actually making a comp around him. He does still rank in the top 3 late game ADCs though on this list. The Emperor of Shurima himself is going to be ranked number 13th. Similar to Ryze, this is a champion whose late game power is highly valued in competitive play, and rightfully so, as his DPS, range, and even playmaking potential with that sick shuffling skills are hard to match in teamfights, which is where he excels even in solo queue. That also happens to be one of his biggest issues, because those big 5v5 front-to-back teamfights that Azir is so good at rarely happen in solo queue, where people are more likely, you know, the jungle for example, are more likely to cut on the late game before Elder spawns than they are to actually be able to smite it. So it's true that he is a late game teamfight front-to-back monster, it's just that those rarely happen in solo queue, which is why he's going to rank a little bit lower on the tier list compared to his actual strength in the late game. Not to mention, he does struggle in teamfights where a lot of things are split up and there's a lot of different sides of the fight happening at the same time, which is something that occurs more in solo queue than in competitive play. At number 12, and just outside of the top 10, will be Vega. His late game power is pretty undeniable. He's got the infinite scaling, absurd low CDs on his poke abilities, long range, he's got that targeted one-shot nuke ultimate, and then what I like to call the rage cage, and his E is just so perfect for teamfight zoning or picking up kills in the late game. This guy's got a lot of amazing tools to win at that stage of the game. The reason he doesn't actually rank higher and why his win rate might be lower than some of the people above him in the late game is actually that although he has a lot of tools, they aren't as reliable. When you think about it, his Q and W are pretty easy to dodge. The cage is super strong though, but it isn't good when people come in from different angles, which is common in solo queue. His ult can kill one person per fight, but it is negated by Zhonya's in GA, which is more common in super late game. Either way, this guy is still really strong and is very close to being in the top 10, and versus low range comps, he can easily 1v9. Next up at number 11, we've got Twitch as the second highest ranked ADC on this list. One of the biggest threats on the late game due to his ability to just murder a team fight on his own with a good ult opener. He's got the spray and pray or rat-tat-tat-tat. That was an awful name change, by the way. And then he just picks up a pentakill from a mile away, or he can use his stealth to get get that juicy pick right before Baron starts, and Twitch is just a champion you never want to face in the late game because of that dual threat potential. Then when you pair him with enchanters like Lulu, his reliability in the late game increases a lot, but without those kind of champions, Twitch can have some pretty derpy moments where he opens up FBI style and dies instantly at the beginning of a team fight because he tries to flash a Malphite ultimate only to forget he didn't have flash up and instantly throws the game. Happens way more often than what you would think. The other major issue with him is he can feel kinda useless without his ultimate if it's misused, because his auto attack range without it is pretty low, but overall an amazing late game champion. We're getting into that top 10 now, and first up, this champion will give you kind of a bit of a shock, and it's actually Teemo. Now I get it, he is traditionally not considered a late game monster champion, but his win rate by game length and every single bracket of play increases really quickly, and when you think about it a bit more, he does have some really strong late game tools. In terms of dueling, his 1v1 ability due to his blind and his very strong single target burst damage should not be underestimated, and that kind of pick can just net a Baron into a win right afterwards. He can also randomly get picks due to his stealth mechanic, he can split push as a win condition, his shrooms can almost one-shot people on full build. Even though he's not a teamfight god like many other late game champions on this list, his guerrilla warfare tactics create a lot of pressure in the late game situations, netting him that juicy LP when it's needed most. At number 9, we have the Bloodlord and Edgelord Vladimir. This is a champion whose late game teamfighting is among the best in the game, as for some reason, he's given the ability to one-shot an entire team while literally being unkillable due to his W. And then if that wasn't bad enough, he still has major health sustain and sustained damage. His ultimate also, I know a lot of people forget about this, but it has a damage amp on it that works on his own abilities, but also his teammates' abilities, making it so that the frontline champions will struggle to survive against his damage, which most champions even barely have enough damage to kill him. His only real weakness in the late game and why he doesn't rank higher is his range is kind of short, and without his flash, he really isn't that useful in a team fight, but with it, he kind of wins every single fight. Rank number 8 is going to be longtime farmer Nasteey. Infinite damage scaling on his spammable, undodgeable Q, who knew that would make him appear really high up on this tier list. Unlike other infinite scaling champions like Veigar, the reason Nasteey does so well is that his win condition split pushing is not team dependent like Veigar's, which is actually, your team actually has to start the team fight for you and then peel for you, and it's not as reliable as stuff that counts on you doing stuff. I mean, when you're split pushing in the late game as Nasteey, you might not even notice you have a team, and nor do you even care because you're likely going to out base race the 5 people on the enemy team anyways. The other issue with him in the late game is, in terms of 1v1 potential, I don't think there's even a lot, I don't even think there's a handful of champions that could possibly beat him, which forces 2 to 5 players to come back to deal with him, giving him so much value in the late game. And he can still teamfight decently too, so even if split push isn't going to work, he has other options to fall back on. At rank number 7, we got another popular low elo champion, and that's Master Yi. Known for his ability to both split push and 1v9 teamfights into getting a pentakill in the late game, there's no doubt that he was going to place high on this tier list. But Adam, doesn't he do well in the late game only in low elo? Doesn't he just get shut down in high elo where people have, known to CC him or actually kite properly, stuff like that, So fun fact, his high elo win rate in the late game is still really good, it's just that he almost never makes it to that point in one piece because his early game pressure is so low, he tends to get abused, but as shown by the absurd Yi-Terra combo in high elo, he still runs over teamfights no matter what skill bracket he's in. It just depends on if he's able to get those items in a timely manner. Master Yeezus is just one of those champions where one mistake causes him to kill an entire team while having so much DPS he can build multiple defensive items and still kill everyone. It's kind of crazy like that. Next up, just outside of the top 5, we have my favorite control mage snake lady, Cassiopeia. With the mage rework came in, she was designed to be a late game carry, and even after a lot of changes, there's no doubt that she is one. You got the fact that she doesn't have to sacrifice anything to have a full 6-item build without boots is huge, and then you add in her kiting ability with the Twin Fang, having huge DPS in team fights, having that big team fight ultimate. You got the utility from Miasma due to its zoning effects, the grounding effect, and you got yourself a 1v9 teamfight queen. Now, the difference between her and other late game mages on this list is that her DPS is more reliable. Her DPS is actually higher, and her 1v1 dueling, her self-peel, and her kiting are way better, which gives her a more consistent time carrying even messy fights during the late game compared to things like Azir or Veigar, at least in solo queue. Alright, so now we've actually entered the top 5 late game champions. In this one, well, you might get triggered a little bit by it because she isn't considered a carry in any way. In fact, she looks to get carried, both physically and metaphorically, and that's Yuumi. The thing about late game Yuumi is that she has so many tools to easily allow others to win the game for her. Her Q can set up picks, her ultimate can easily carry an entire team fight, but more importantly, her healing is so high that her carries just can't die. and so that means that you can play wildly aggressive in fights to deal the maximum amount of DPS without having to worry about your positioning. And like, it doesn't even need to be a hyper carry either. Yuumi can just attach to a bruiser like Aatrox or a Juggernaut like Darius, giving them way too much mobility and survivability that someone's eventually gonna get cut out and just die, and then Yuumi, just triumphantly riding on the back of the hard work of others, is gonna chase down the rest of the team in the late game and just win. Yuumi late game is just really silly to deal with. At number 4, we actually have Vayne. Vayne on 6 items is a champion that literally no one else in the game is going to be able to tank for longer than a couple of seconds. Her damage and her single target DPS simply kills everything around her. But Adam, doesn't she need good positioning and mechanics to do this in the late game due to her short range? Hell no. With stealth and 0 skill shots, her ability to outduel and individually pick off people in a fight once she has items is the best in the game. It takes absolutely 0 skill to kill someone in a fight as Vayne. Once you've got maxed out items, you just right click and tumble around in a random direction, staying in auto range, and they die in a couple of seconds. Her DPS and damage output in the late game is both incredibly high and reliable while having self-fuel and dueling power, so making plays on her own is really easy to do. There's only 2 downsides to Vayne in the late game. 1, her auto attack range, and 2, Vayne's getting drunk off of their own power and stumbling forward to their own death. At number 3, we actually have Taric. Yep, another enchanter tops this list, and there's a reason why he's paired with Master Yi so often. Sure, he's got some good stuns, shields, heals, all the things that make a solid late game team fighter for an enchanter. The biggest thing about him though, and why his win rate is so high, is his ultimate. Just remember, that thing is 2.5 seconds of invulnerability. Sure, this might not sound amazing at first, but then you remember on 6 items, if an entire team doesn't have to worry about dying and giving them time to fully DPS and ignore their positioning, then you're like, oh wait, in League of Legends right now, everyone dies in less than 1 second on 6 items, so okay, yeah, maybe that's a little broken. Simply put, because his ultimate lets people dive in to deal max DPS at a time in the game where people die faster than its actual duration, he almost always wins late game teamfights. At rank number 2, we actually have Sona. So once again, an enchanter's at the top of this list, but for Sona, it's for similar reasons as to why Yuumi's there. She's got absurd amounts of utility in the late game with a high amount of AP. She can be really hard to deal with those heals, the shields, the movement speed like Sonic, and a team-wide stun for fights. She can be pretty clutch. But that's definitely not enough to rank her as the 2nd spot, right? Well, of course it's not. Her 2 biggest strengths in the late game compared to other enchanters or even other champions is, first thing, something many people don't realize about her level 16 ultimate. Her level 16 ult has a passive where it reduces her basic ability CD by 40%, and yes, if that sounds broken in the late game, it's because it is. The other reason is, unlike other enchanters, she isn't all utility. She's got the burst damage with Q, power chord, and ultimate to actually 1 rotation to carry in the late game, giving her both the lowest CDs in the game, some of the best utility, and some absurd burst damage, making her essentially a one-woman team comp in the late game. And ranked at number 1, the champion you've all been waiting for and the champion you all expected. He's got the mobility, he's got the damage, he's got a K in his name. That's right, it's Renekton. Hold up here, let me explain. Renekton as a champion was designed to stomp the laning phase, making it so that he always wins before the late game, giving him 0 losses in the late game, and he always closes out before then. Okay, I couldn't keep that up for very long. I'm just messing around. It's very obviously Kassadin. He's got the highest win rate in the late game out of any champion across all brackets of play. It's around 60% with no one else being even close. There's really no debate. He's a champion who can kill someone in 1 rotation. He's still tanky, he has that magic damage reduction passive, and then of course the 1-second blink that does damage, meaning you just can't get away from him. Whether it's 1v1 split pushing, setting up picks, or even team fights, Kassadin does it all in the late game, while having his damage be very reliable and easy to land. He's super safe, and so the investment in his poor early game is definitely worth it. Late game Kassadin is so strong, he doesn't even need his team. He just roams around the map, rifting over walls as he pleases like he owns the place, and that's because he kinda does, because no one can stop him. Alright, so with the list completed, I wanted to go over some honorable mentions real quick. You got assassin junglers in high elo, things like Evelynn, Kha'Zix, Rengar, Shaco. They actually do really well despite their poor team fighting, because stealth and solo queue lets you end up with really easy picks that will net you a Baron or an Elder. Then we've got the team fighters, Amumu, Kayle, Darius, and low elo, because people end up getting wombo combo by these champions. Then we've got Marksman, Kai'Sa, Corki, Aphelios for high elo specifically. They do really well in the late game when people have the mechanics needed to not feed, and people tend to peel a little bit better. Enchanters in general are just overpowered, especially Zilean. That class, including Rakan, especially in low elo, scales super well into the late game, as utility can turn a person trying to feed into a planned engage. Tanks like Ornn and Maokai are super close, both in low and in high elo to making this list, but don't have as much impact needed to win solo queue games consistently compared to some of the other champions on the list. We got honorable mentions for Fiora and Jax for their split pushing, and then Orianna and Rumble and high elo for their team fighting. These 4 champions do really well, but only in that bracket. Then we've got Karthus and Graves and Hilo as very strong scaling junglers, but junglers kind of suck at scaling in general right now, so they just didn't make it. And the last section, I will do a dishonorable mention list just for fun. GP is likely someone you thought would show up on this list, but across every platform, his win rate in the late game fluctuates between 49 and 51%, making him not as reliable in the late game as what you would think for solo queue at the very least. I think it's very similar to Ryze though, and he's better utilized in competitive play. Also, the #1 worst champion in the late game is, funny enough, Jace, with an average win rate of 43%, with a very close second and third being the ultimate center champion Renekton and then Nidalee. In terms of the worst late game 5-man roster for solo queue, it would look something like Renekton top, Jace mid, Nidalee jungle, Ezreal AD carry, and then Tahm Kench support, which is kind of funny because it's a decent poke comp and you might even see a lot of that composition in competitive play, but individually, these 5 champions are just awful for late game solo queue. So that's it. I'm your host, Adam Moriarty Isles. Be sure to check out our other content on this channel as well as at mobalytics.gg. May the old and new solo queue gods be with you.